Hello and welcome to the next installment in the Tight 20 marketing series from Ballyhoo Digital, where we give you real actionable marketing advice in a compact format that does not waste your time. Today, I will be your moderator. My name is Brian Petrovich. In today's episode, we're going to be speaking about using simple analytics to learn how visitors interact with your site and how to measure the success of your marketing. We will also have a brief Q&A at the end, so please submit any questions via chat, and we'll do our best to answer them as clearly as possible. Now, without further ado, I would like to introduce the founder and owner of Ballyhoo Digital, Scott Hicks.
Hello, everyone. Hope everyone's having a great day. I am really excited on this Thursday. We've had such a great turnout for most of our webinars, and it seems to be growing every week. Brian, I'd like to say thanks for being our moderator here today and taking care of those introductory duties. If you are also my test audience, so if you can see me, just let me know. Everything good?
You are good to go. You're
okay,
clear
great.
For takeoff.
Awesome. So today can kind of be a tricky one. I'm going to do my very best to keep this tight, a nice tight 20 minutes. But analytics can be somewhat of a complicated, occasionally be a complicated subject. We're going to try to make it as simple as possible, though. In essence, we could spend many, many hours talking about analytics. And the fact is that the more visits you have to your website, the more popular website is, the more powerful and useful analytics can be. You can use more tools, you can see more trends with bigger numbers, and all of that's pretty important. However, basic analytics is useful for everybody who has a website and is trying to promote a business or services and products on that website. So you can get a lot of great information that doesn't really require a degree in statistics to interpret. So let's kind of get started here. Let me bear with me for 1 second. All right, and I think we're ready to go here. You guys should see this, our slideshow here. All right, and okay, so what is analytics? I think most people have kind of a pretty decent idea of what analytics is, and I call this the real power behind digital marketing. For anybody who's done any sort of traditional marketing and advertising through print media, television, radio, things like that, the downside is that you don't always, it's not that easy to measure how effective those types of things are. With digital marketing and analytics, that's really, you can really get pretty accurate about where all of your visitors are coming from, where your activity is coming from, and therefore, and maybe most importantly, whether or not your marketing dollars are being spent effectively. Are they actually producing returns for you? Analytics essentially tells a story, and the story is, where do your visitors come from? What are they doing on your site? If you think about it, it's a way to measure visitor behavior with numbers, and it tends to be kind of, it's never going to be the 100% perfectly clear picture. But once you're able to understand some of these numbers, you can interpret it. It's more like a connect the dots or a paint by numbers type of thing. And essentially, it also lets you know if you're meeting the needs of your visitors and whether or not your marketing efforts are working. GA, Google Analytics, is kind of the gold standard, and I have gold in parentheses. It's basically the standard for analytics. It's provided by Google. It's free of charge, and it gives you a ton of useful tools. There are other analytics packages out there. I've used some of them. Google Analytics, again, is the one that is far and away on most websites. If you have a simple website through a provider like GoDaddy using their builder, most people, most platforms that you can build a website on will give you some sort of basic analytics as well. So even though the way that you look at those numbers might be different, the types of numbers that you're going to look at are going to be the same. Again, something like GoDaddy or other built-in packages, they tend to not be as powerful, but we're going to try to stick with some of the simpler numbers anyway. So, so how does it work? There's an on-site script that sends your visitor info to Google Analytics. So, without getting too deep into the weeds, if you build your own and maintain your own website, you can drop the Google Analytics script onto your site. Again, it is built in to some other things like GoDaddy website builder, or can be built in. If you have a web admin, if you have somebody else who manages your website for you, they should be able to do it fairly easily. We won't go into the specific instructions on how that is, but essentially anything anybody does on your site that information is sent to Google, and it's compiled in their analytics for you to review later. All the data is anonymized, and that is necessary and part of Google's terms of service. So you aren't able to tell which visitors, for the most part, which specific visitors are doing what on your site. You won't be able to backtrace them to a particular email address or something like that. So you can't mark it backwards through that. It's really just a data generation and storage platform there for you. So you can't think of it as a way to gather data and again, reach back out individually to visitors. All right, the important numbers to look at. Again, there's so much that you can look at within analytics, but really, if you're a small business and you're doing this on your own, or even your medium-sized businesses, there are some very basic and primary numbers that you want to look at, and they can give you some information, give you some very valuable information. For example, how many visits have there been to your website? That's a pretty basic metric. And if you had 1,000 visits last month and you have 2,000 this month, well, that's a pretty good indicator that you're doing something right, that something is working there. It doesn't tell the full story, of course. And you have to be, and that's when you look at any number in analytics, you have to figure this is a piece of the puzzle. It's only part of it. Some things that could distort the number of visits is bots that visit sites, or competitors who come to visit your site. They're not really going to be your potential customers, but if they spend a lot of time looking over your site, those visits, are going to show up. Sometimes people land on your site by accident. If the name of your business is similar to somebody else's, for example, you may get a lot of visits from people who are like, oh, this wasn't exactly what I was looking for. So those are some things to keep in mind. But if you start to see a consistent trend in the increase in number of visits or decrease, it's telling you something. Where do your visitors come from? That's another important, it's not really a number, I guess, but it is an important statistic. Did your visitors come from a Google search that they did? Did they come through clicking on an ad that you placed online somewhere? Did they come from an email that you sent out? These are the things that, it's super important to know where they're coming from, so you know what's driving your traffic and what's most effective. Let's see, there is, what did they, and this is important too, and this is a little more challenging to tease out, is what did your visitors do when they got to your site? So your homepage is probably going to be the page that gets the most traffic. But what do they do from there? What other pages did they visit? What did they do on those pages? How long were they on their pages? Did they pick up the phone and give you a call after they visited your site? Or did they fill out a form or send you an email? All of these things are important because it tells you how effective your site is at relaying information, relaying the information that people are looking for. And we're going to go over a couple of slides here. These next slides are going to be some screenshots of Google Analytics from one of our clients. And we'll try to go over a couple of things here. This is probably, it's been a long time since I was first introduced to Google Analytics. And it can be a little frightening at first to look at. There seem to be so much information, so many things to look at. And we're going to go over a few of them again to kind of familiarize you with some of these things. Keep in mind, again, if you are not using Google Analytics and you're using some other analytics, the information you want to look at is the same. It just is probably going to look different on your screen, and how you access it is going to look a little different. This is not specifically an analytics tutorial, but again, as the most popular analytics method, Google Analytics, we'll use that. So this is the thing that I look at first on pretty much every client. This is where I get the straightforward information that I want. On the acquisition tab, all traffic. This is really what we're looking for. This is the sources of the traffic that we're looking at. So if you see over here where it says default channel grouping, and you've got a highlighted area here, these are the types of traffic, the basic types of traffic that you'll see on a website. These are essentially, these are the channels, or these are the sources of the visitors that you get. Where did they come from? How did they get to your site? Number one is great. That's organic search. That means somebody did a search on Google, or if they use Bing or something like that, that people still do actually use that, and even Yahoo. Those are considered organic searches. If they do that search and they're not clicking on an ad, they just see something from your site there, those are called organic searches. Paid search, again, fairly simple. If you go to a Google search page and you see some ads at the top of the page, or you're running some Google ads, they're going to click on one of those, and that's going to account for those paid search numbers. Direct, the direct channel is people who have typed in to their browser bar your website address, and that can be, there are ways to get to get this information out, but that can also include a lot of internal traffic. If you go to your own website quite a bit, that can account for a lot of direct traffic. Now, there are ways. Again, we won't get into the specifics of that, but that's one thing to keep in mind, is that if you visit your site a lot, that's going to affect your direct numbers. Display is a type of display ad. That's essentially graphical ads that you'll see on different web pages and things like that. Referral traffic is traffic that comes from another website, that they've clicked on a link from another website to your website. That's usually pretty good traffic, by the way. And the last example we have on this one is email. And that, sort of speaks for itself. If you send out email campaigns to existing or potential new customers, that's the number of people who have visited from those campaigns. Another thing to look at here is, this is another, or the important numbers, I'm sorry, to look at within this, sessions, which is, again, that's the number of visits to your site from those particular channels. The number of pages per session. This can tell you some things too. So how many pages are people going to on your site? This particular client has almost 5 pages on average, which can be pretty good. That means this particular client is an e-commerce site, so it means that people are probably looking at multiple products. That's generally a good thing. Session duration, this can have value too. Again, all of these are pieces of the puzzle. The longer somebody stays on a site, the more likely they are to interact with the site, to reach out, to pick up the phone and call you, or fill out a form, or buy something on your site. So generally speaking, the higher the session duration on average, the better you're doing. There are ways to get that up, and there's some ways to artificially lower that. So again, it's just a piece of the puzzle. Bots, for instance, don't spend very much time on a site. So if you happen to get a lot of visits by bots, that's going to lower that session duration. So again, everything is sort of taken with a grain of salt, and it's sort of combined with the other numbers to present a clearer picture of what's going on. Goal completions. This is another one. Hang on, let me, go back here. Goal completions. We talked about this in our last webinar, which is setting up the things that you'd like for people to do on your website, what you would consider valuable actions for them to take. And I've mentioned this multiple times here. Phone calls, form fills, emails. Those are all trackable actions. And you can set them up as goals on your website. And then you can start to see how many of these actions are taking place from each of the individual channels. So if you are selling a ton, or if you have a lot of goal completions from your emails, but not so much from your paid search, well, you have to look at why that is. Maybe there's a way that you can shift resources from one marketing channel to another and get better results. So these are all things that you want to kind of keep an eye on to measure that effectiveness. Behavior on your site. This is another section on Google Analytics. You probably won't find this so much in the as much in the simpler analytics packages, but this is really, there's a lot of things that you can look at here to see what are people doing once they get there. This particular slide introduces a couple of things here. This is page path level 1. Essentially, this is just a breakdown of the individual pages on your site and how many views of those pages you're seeing. This is a 30-day stretch, so it's a pretty good number on all of these. But it will tell you which are the most popular pages on your site. And that's useful information to have. People say, okay, I'm getting a lot of visitors to these pages. How long are they spending on this page? Whoops, again, I apologize. Let me go back here. The average time on a specific page can give you some idea about how valuable that page is. So the longer somebody's spending on a particular page, or the converse of that, the shorter amount of time somebody's spending on the page, the less value it might have. Maybe the information on there isn't complete enough for people to spend much time there, or maybe they've gotten to that page and didn't find what they were looking for, so they went to another page. Again, all these are great things to look at. Another thing, this is some really cool stuff too. So the last couple of things we were looking at, the numbers we were looking at, are probably the very most important things to look at. You can get into the weeds pretty easily when you start looking at your audience. These are some demographics. This particular website has almost 4/5 of the visitors are male, as opposed to 1/5 female. It has to do with their specific industry. This isn't information that we actually particularly use. The age range is kind of interesting in here as well, but generally speaking, that's not information that we will use. It's always good to know more about your audience in general, but it's only good to the extent that you can find value in it. So if you look over here to the side, you can see, you get age and gender. You can look at the interests of people who are visiting your site. You can look at the geography and see where they're coming from, where those visitors are coming from, specifically by city, area, state, even country. You can look at what kind of browser that they use, what kind of device they're looking at. Is it on a phone, and what kind of phone? Is it a laptop or a tablet? So there's a ton of information out here, but again, a lot of that is really not that useful. Whether or not somebody's using a mobile device, well, there can be some use for that, but if you have a site that's well designed so that people on mobile have as good an experience as the people on a desktop or a laptop, then it may not really matter. So that, and I'm already well over 26 minutes, and I feel like I've rushed through this, guys. There's probably a million questions out there. And again, I can't stress enough that this is really just an overview of some of the information, the most important information that you can get out there. Google does offer free online classes in analytics, and that really gets into the weeds, but you might find it useful if you really want to get your head around a lot of this stuff. You can take these classes and actually get a certification in Google Analytics, or you can hire somebody. Ballyhoo Digital is a pretty good company for that, to help you analyze analytics, to set it up on your site and whatnot. Don't generally like to pitch us for that, but if it's something that is over your head, or you feel it may be a little more involved than you want to get, then sure. The analytics that we show our clients are generally a little simpler than this. We kind of pull out the things that once we have discussions with them, we pull out the things that they need to see, and we build our own dashboard of basic reporting analytics for them that we can modify as we go if they need more in-depth information. So I hope this hasn't been too fast. I hope it hasn't also been too long for you guys. We're going to go ahead and open it up to questions now, and see what we've got out there. I appreciate you guys sticking in here and visiting us today. And let's see what we've got.
Scott, we do have one question that was sent in this week, and it's in regards to small businesses, and they'd like to know, for small business owners with new sites, what's the one analytic they should monitor the most?
I don't think you can just say one. I really don't. I mean, site visitors is probably the biggest one. Again, if you start to see really significant changes in the number of site visitors, that is upward or downward, then you have to think there's a reason for that. But you have to combine that with some of these other metrics. I don't think you can just look at one. If I were a brand new site owner, I would look at number of visits. I'd look at where they were coming from. Is it a Google search? And you have to really know, I mean, do you have what marketing do you have going on? If you're just building your site, you're not doing any paid search marketing, no email or anything like that, then just look at the number of sessions, and probably look at whether or not they're organic, because if you're not doing anything else to drive traffic to your site, then that's the most important place that it could be coming from. And then, of course, like I said, I'd look at how long they're spending on the site and try to see which pages they are visiting. If they're not spending very long on the site, then you have to wonder whether or not they're finding what they came there to look for. So I'd say those are pretty big numbers there. How long they're on the site, how many pages, and the total number of sessions.
Perfect. Thank you. That's it. That's the only question we have today. It's, I guess, a light day for you today, Scott. Not too hard.
Yeah. It's again, I feel like I ran through this pretty quickly, guys, and for that I apologize. I probably would have been easier to break this into a couple of sessions and go over it in a little more detail. But again, this was not necessarily intended as a tutorial, or more of an overview, and just to give you some insight on the things that are most important to look at. I did forget to mention that if you have an e-commerce site, you can track sales through Google Analytics as well. And that obviously would be a very important number. Most sites are really not e-commerce sites, but that is the equivalent of goals on a site. And of course, you can have multiple goals that have different values and things like that. And it really can get a lot more complicated. But if you're just starting out, if you've got a newer site, or you don't get a whole ton of traffic, then I think that the numbers that we went over today are probably the most important things you can look at on a day-to-day basis. Of course, if you guys have any questions, you can reach out to us. I'm Scott at ballyhoodigital.com, and I'm happy to answer your questions. If you want to replay this at a slower speed, we're going to get this up on YouTube as quickly as possible. And we'll try to send some links out to you guys so you know where to find it. And we'll eventually have a transcript on the Ballyhoo Digital website as well. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. Thank you again very much for attending. We've been so excited with all the turnout and the success we've had with this series so far. We'll be back in about 3 weeks. And I think next time we're gonna start talking about some of the very specific digital marketing opportunities that are out there. The channels, like we haven't decided the particular order just yet, but we'll talk about paid search advertising in the coming weeks, search engine optimization, email marketing, things like that. So stick around, and please give us any feedback you can. Like I said, Scott at ballyhoodigital.com, and hope to see you next time. Thanks again.